You ever wonder what happened to some of those futuristic tech ideas? You know, the ones that seemed like they were going to change everything, and then they just kind of vanished? Well, today we're doing a deep dive into one of those exact stories. This is the case study of SONAD, a really fascinating proprietary technology from a company called N5 Digital Inc. We're going to look at its complex journey through innovation, hardware roadblocks, and of course, privacy. Okay, let's get into it.
So what in the world is SONAD? At its heart, it's a pretty brilliant concept that N5 Digital came up with. Imagine that any audio you're hearing, the TV, the radio, even a podcast, is carrying a secret signal that you can't hear. SONAD's tech lets an app on your phone pick up on this audio barcode, and boom, it instantly brings up related content. The easiest way to wrap your head around it, it's literally a QR code you can hear. No cameras, no pointing, just listening.
This quote from the source material just nails the grand vision. It wasn't about doing just one little thing. No, the idea was to create this unified experience where everything you hear could have a second, interactive layer to it, all riding on the exact same sound wave. That is a truly ambitious idea.
All right, so to really get this story, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. First, we'll look at the initial promise. What was this thing supposed to be? Then, we're going to get into the major tech hurdles it slammed into. After that, we'll clear up the real picture on privacy, because it's probably not what you think. From there, we'll map out a blueprint for how it could be revived, and finally, we'll figure out the best places in the world to actually launch it.
So, let's start with Section 1, the promise of SONAD. What was this technology actually supposed to do for us?
What's so cool is just how many things it was designed to do. So picture this. You're watching a TV show. An icon could pop up on your phone with info about the cast. Or you hear a radio ad for pizza. A coupon for that pizza place appears on your screen instantly. You could even be at a stadium or a trade show and get information for exactly where you're standing. And for businesses, oh man, this was a goldmine of engagement analytics. It was meant to be a win-win, and you, the user, could control it with a simple pause button.
Which brings us to Section 2, and really, the million-dollar question. If this idea was so great, why isn't it everywhere? This is where the story gets really complicated.
The problem basically splits down to very different roads. On one side, you've got what we're calling the iOS blocker, a huge wall put up by Apple's hardware and software. And on the other side, you have Android. Now that path is open, it's viable, but it comes with this massive headache called a device heterogeneity tax. That's just a fancy way of saying you have to test and tweak the tech for thousands of different phone models, a gigantic task.
So let's dig into that Apple wall a little more. SONAD's audio barcodes are sent at a really high frequency, around 20 kilohertz. That's right at the edge of what humans can even hear. The problem is, a lot of iPhone microphones just aren't built to pick that up cleanly. And even worse, iOS itself messes with the audio, and it can distort or just erase those signals completely. Apple's ecosystem is famously opinionated, which means it's a locked garden. You play by their rules or you don't play. So the bottom line is, without a total redesign of the core tech, a full-on iOS comeback is pretty much off the table.
And now for Section 3. Beyond the tech, there was another huge obstacle: privacy. You know, most people assume that apps like this got shut down because of some new law that forbids apps from listening. But the truth is, it's a lot more nuanced than that.
So let's just tackle that myth head on. Is there one single global law out there that says an app is absolutely forbidden from listening to the world around it?
The answer is a very clear and simple no. There's no blanket ban like that. So, what's really going on?
The real barrier isn't one thing. It's actually 3 big things working together. First, you've got the app stores themselves. Apple and Google have really strict rules. You need clear permission from the user, and you have to show a little icon when the mic is on. Second, the phone's operating system now gives users these super powerful controls, like a big off switch for the microphone for all apps. And third, you have these big legal frameworks, like GDPR over in Europe, that demand transparency and user consent. It's not one law, it's an entire ecosystem of rules and user expectations.
So with all of that stacked against it, you might be thinking, it's game over, right? Well, not so fast. Let's move to Section 4 and actually look at the blueprint for a revival. Is a comeback even possible?
Okay, the single biggest decision for bringing back tech like SONAD comes down to one choice. Do you try for an always listening mode? Today, that is incredibly high risk. It means you have to have annoying notifications on the screen all the time, and it just kills user trust. The much smarter path is user-initiated listening. Think about how Shazam works. You tap a button when you want the app to listen. It's low risk, people trust it, and it's way, way easier to get it approved by the app stores.
Now, to pull that off, you have to follow 4 core rules. First, privacy has to be built in from the start. That means all the audio processing happens right there on your phone. Raw sound never gets uploaded to a server. Second, and this is a big one, you retain no audio, ever, and you have to be super clear about that. Third, the app's interface has to be totally transparent, with an obvious I'm listening now icon and a big, easy-to-find stop button. And finally, you have to commit to that product shift. Relaunch as a tap-to-listen app, period.
Okay, so you've got your new privacy-first game plan. Where in the world do you actually launch it? Section 5 lays out what an Android-first global strategy would look like.
The comeback plan has to start with Android. The reason is really simple. Just look at the market share. Android runs on nearly 3/4 of all smartphones on the entire planet. And since we already talked about that big iOS blocker, focusing on this massive market is really the only logical first move.
But Android isn't just one giant market, right? You got to be smart about where you start. This table here ranks countries based on how good they'd be for a tap-to-listen app. The absolute best bets are places with huge numbers of Android users and pretty workable privacy rules, like India, Brazil, and Indonesia. Markets like Japan and South Korea are good, but users there are a bit more skeptical. Europe is harder because of GDPR, and a place like Australia is probably the worst place to start because they have some really strict laws about listening devices.
So it all boils down to a pretty simple 3-step playbook. 1. Launch the Android-only app in those best-tier countries first. 2. Use crystal-clear messaging that builds trust from day 1. And 3. Start by building some momentum with business-to-business pilots, maybe with broadcasters or at public events, where people actually expect an interactive experience.
You know, the story of SONAD is about more than just one company's proprietary technology. It really forces all of us to ask a much bigger question. As our devices get smarter and more aware of the world around us, and as innovators keep creating these amazing new things, how do we, as users, as a society, strike the right balance between these powerful new ideas and our fundamental right to privacy? That's a question we're all going to be answering for a long, long time.